Hello, everybody here in the room and virtually. Welcome to Ignite 2022. My name is Adjoa Boatin Kwache, and I'm a product manager in the Azure AD engineering team. Thank you for joining our session today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ramiro Calderon. I'm also a product manager in the Azure AD engineering team. And, we've been doing this for a while. We work with the largest, most complex customers all over the world to help them deploy Azure AD. The first few years was more about how do I even get up there, how this feature works, etc. But over time, and as Azure AD features grow, the questions have been more around how do I put these features together? What should I do first? How do I get to a point where I spend less money on premises?
These are all great questions from our customers, Ramiro. Azure AD has evolved and has so many features now, but us releasing the features and customers deploying it is just one piece of it. Today, we'd like to share with you how you can stitch together the Azure AD capabilities, first, to transform your environment for the scenarios that matter to your organization, and secondly, to plan how you can decommission parts of your existing on-prem infrastructure.
All right, so I'm grateful that we did some housekeeping before, so if you want to scan that QR code to join the chat and have questions, we've been doing this for quite a while, and it's not just the two of us. It's a lot of our colleagues that they are also available in the chat to answer the questions as they come up. So feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'll get them as they come. With that out of the way, here's the agenda.
Yeah, so here's a look at the agenda, which reflects how we have broken down the journey. We want to start by setting the stage on why it's important to do this. And then we'll move on to the journey stages. First, we'll start with the basics you need to know to get your environment ready. And then we'll move on to what a cloud-first identity access management looks like. And we'll show you a demo over here. And then from there, we'll move on and look at the existing on-premises infrastructure to see what we can migrate over time and the things that we can decommission. And then finally wrap it up with actionable tasks for you to go and do.
With homework. All right, so before we go in details, we want to get to know the room in person and virtually, so quick, first time we do this hybrid, so hopefully it goes well. What is your current stance of moving identity access management journey to the cloud? How many of you are a little bit skeptical that you can't do much at this point in time? Just show of hands. One person. All right. Makes so much easier. All right. How about, I assume the rest of us are already convinced that there's a lot we can do in the cloud? All right, let's go. We have a different crowd that when we do this in one-on-one with customers. How about on the chat? Can we see? 100%. Oh, wow. Okay, so you just saved me like 5 minutes of talking then. Let's keep going here and talk about a little bit the reality check.
Yeah.
Good and bad news.
So for the optimists here in the group, we have to set expectations. First, let's acknowledge that we know that the on-premises footprint is going to be around for a while. Because for a large number of customers, there have been a lot of tools and technologies and processes that have had a high dependency on Active Directory over time. And these will need to be rationalized, they'll need to be prioritized, right? And so there's going to be quite a bit of we don't know what we don't know.
Right, so then we had a good news for the folks that are a little bit skeptical that there is a lot that we can do right now. So what we're going to spend the rest of the time, the presentation, is to how we put those projects together and kind of get the migration going at your own pace, no matter where your starting point. So to unpack on that, especially now that we are mostly in an optimistic crowd, we just have this slide to kind of summarize the benefits of doing this in the first place. So first thing, I don't know how many of you have received the question of, or actually is AD in the cloud. So it's not that. It's a cloud identity system, a cloud identity solution that powers a lot of other capabilities. So in terms of the benefits, the first one that we hear from customers and that we believe is obviously better security. We have native, modern credentials that are stronger than what we have on-prem. So I don't think that it's controversial anymore to say that we can defend on-prem with the legacy toolkit against especially the new attacks, the new patterns, the new threats, they keep evolving, right? So Stronger credentials is one tool in the toolkit, and also the signal, right? So we have across the different Microsoft cloud services, was it 171 terabytes of signal every single day that feeds machine learning models that in turn translates into insights for us. New anomalies, insights, even threats in your environment that you can take action to detect, respond. So that is very important.
Yeah, this reminds me of the SolarWinds attack. Some of our customers that were using Federation servers lost control of their token signing keys and had a massive blast radius, but the customers that had already migrated to Azure AD had less significant impact. And this was so remarkable that in December 2020, the NSA recommended that customers consider using Azure AD as the authoritative identity provider.
Yeah, I remember that was an interesting holiday season for us. Part of the benefit on that journey was that we learned from it, and the machine learning signals were, like the models were refined to start catching that as a detection. So if you have already MDE, for example, you'll see some of these detections about token exfiltration or anomalous SAML token detections. So another thing that just this, in the keynote, if you folks saw it, we launched the authentication strength, conditional access capability, so you can have all these tools in the toolkit. Again, you can defend with all security model, but with this, it's constantly evolving to keep up with the threat landscape. Another benefit is better productivity, right? So we have the usual self-service portal, discover what applications you have, but we have also been investing into making sure that users can request access in a more cohesive way, in a way that we have lifecycle also under control, the admin side. And lastly, one of the largest benefits that in my view, of seeing this and building this with customers is with better return of investment. We can do this orders of magnitude quicker than we could have done it on-prem. We have larger customers that we talked to had some flavors of solving these problems somehow with a point solution, but the challenge is maintaining it over time. Takes time, money, budget, and it's different systems talking to each other. It's very hard to integrate, and sometimes it's not integrated at all. So blind spots in the environment, back to the signal, but I digressed. So what I meant at the end of the day is that for most customers who don't have that same amount of resources or bandwidth, this is not even an option with doing on premises. With this, it's very quick, and we're going to kind of showcase that in a demo a little bit, but this becomes more available for us in very short period of time.
Yeah, for sure, the pandemic accelerated this. I think during the lockdowns, we had a customer that had an issue with their VPN capacity. They were able to deploy Azure AD App Proxy, launch critical applications like their intranet, and also launched My Apps as their work-from-home portal. And they did that in 2 business days.
Right, so that was like the COVID package for them to go and work more from the house. All right, cool. So now let's unpack the basics. What do we need to get ready in order to transform?
So we want to take a step back and look at what a typical on-premises environment looks like. It starts simple and gets more complex as more workloads and requirements are added to it. This can look like a lot to take on, but when you dig deeper, it boils down to a basic story. A user, part of a group, trying to access an application from a device, right? So most of the on-prem infrastructure fits into these 3 categories. And you have in the middle, as you see in the picture there, the infrastructure to support it. These 3 categories helps us to break down the scenarios and functionality.
Yeah, quick question from the chat. What is MD? Apologies. Microsoft Defender for endpoint. Thank you. Let's keep going. Sorry. All right.
Yeah. So another angle of breaking down the problem is looking at the transformation of the environment over time. So over here, you see the progression from on-premises to the cloud, broken down into 5 different states. So we start mostly on-prem and progressively move the identity and access management to the cloud. Let's dig deeper into each of these states. Right. So the first one, this is where a lot of our customers start from. And here, they just need to access a cloud application like Microsoft 365. The environment stays as is on premises. The focus here is making sure that your users are synced to Azure AD and also the Active Directory accounts can access the cloud application.
Yeah, so basically the only benefit that you get is to get to the app, in this case, get to your email or your Exchange and SharePoint, right? So that's the only benefit you get at that point.
Then in state 2, you are still on premises, but then you are enhancing your environment with some cloud goodness, right? You're using hybrid Azure AD Join to set policies, and then you are also deploying self-service password resets to help reduce your help desk cost, and then password protection to protect some of the block weak passwords in your environment.
Yeah, so you'll start getting some of the security benefits, some of the signal benefits, but fundamentally, you keep your environment assist with on-premises centric infrastructure for identity management. So let's keep going on.
So in state 3, you start changing your processes to use more cloud-native capabilities. So if you have applications that are on ADFS or a similar federation server, you can move those to Azure AD. Any new devices on your environment, you make sure that they are Azure AD joined, and then when you're creating new groups, make sure they are cloud groups. And for your guest users, external guest users, you can leverage our Azure AD B2B feature.
Yeah, so this is where you start really transforming some of the procedures internally or some of the actual kind of way of doing things, right? So a couple of PSAs here, announcements. So if you see in the corner, we have AKMS AD to Azure AD. That is a white paper that Adjoa, myself, and others in the chat wrote, where we document a lot of these in a more extensive and comprehensive detail. So make sure to check that out. We're going to have a link with all the other pointers that we're going to deliver throughout the session. But yeah, I just couldn't resist plugging that white paper here. Another thing is, one example about getting cloud first is getting out of your federation system with ADFS. So check out the session OD26 from our friends Cedric and Meryl, where we talk about how to take a migration from ADFS to Azure AD. So check that out as we go through. So let's keep going here.
Yeah. Then a logical progression from state 3, but more of a deeper transformation is at state 4. So this is where Active Directory is contained and treated as just another target system of the cloud identity system. So here you'd have just a subset of your users, like your admins, having AD accounts. Then you have just a subset of your legacy applications on-prem that you couldn't modernize. And then no more machine accounts joined to Active Directory.
Right. So one of our customers who've been working with us for years, this is their end state. That's how they visualize it. And the way they articulate it, which resonated all with me, was, I want to see AD just as another app that I target. And I think that's a nice kind of for going full circle with stage 1, where the cloud is just one app to my environment, and now you flip, and the AD becomes the one app. That you keep.
The inverse, yes.
All right.
So finally, stage 5 is an environment that is 100% cloud. So there's no on-premises identity and access management footprint. So this is possible to do today for net new environments, like a modern startup or a divestiture.
Right. So, going back to the diagram.
Yeah. So let's go back to our original storyboard. What state would you classify your organization today?
And then folks in the chat, how many of you are just do the bare minimum stage 1? Yes, very few people. Good. How about stage 2? Some hybrid goodness. All right, most of us. All right. How about stage 3? Some staff are cloud first. Okay. Yeah, less hands over time. That's very common. How about stage 4? Ooh, wow. Few of you. Okay, now, stage 5. How many of you cloud-only environments? Awesome. I would love to get a chance to talk to you folks. It's pretty cool. And then, what stage do we want to target? Just moving on to the next question. How many of you want to target, like, get full stage 3 cloud first for my environment? Okay, few. How many want to get to stage 4? Where do you see realistically the landing space? Okay, and stage 5, rest. All right, so that kind of lines with pretty much when we talk to customers. Just to give you some context, Adjoa and I have been doing this, and my colleagues in the chat, for years now, and Most of customers are, they call themselves 2.5, right?
Yes.
Between 2 and 5, 2 and 3, and realistically getting to 4 with existing environment and getting, stage 5 opportunistically as new environments come in. So that's very cool. So very representative of what we have seen before.
All right. So for you, we want to remind you that this will require a far broader set of skills than just your Active Directory team. You'd need to work with your networking team, the security team, your devices team. And so there's going to be a lot of collaboration that needs to happen between these different teams.
Yeah, it's just to kind of another reality check, right? So this is not a grassroots thing that you can do from our identity kind of silo all the way up. This is definitely needs to be transformational and aligned from the top. All right.
All right. So if you already have M365 or Azure in production, then you have like minimum configuration like Azure AD Connect working. Another enhancement is making it work properly and also securely. Ramiro and I work with customers, and when we assess their environments, we find that there are a couple of things that they are missing, and these are a few of the things that we wanted to bring up. First, they do not have MFA enabled for all their privileged accounts. The data that we found was that only 26% of admins had MFA enabled in their accounts. So.
Yeah. So 76% of you. I don't want to show hands on that one. I don't want to know. But strong credentials, please, please.
And then also there is insufficient monitoring. Some customers are not publishing their logs into a SIEM. And then there's too many privileged accounts as well.
Yeah, I remember like one of our customers, nameless obviously, we did the assessment and service principal that has all sorts of permissions in SharePoint that can create, delete anything in the SharePoint environment. And when I asked them about that, it's like, oh, that was when we did the migration from SharePoint on-prem to SharePoint in the cloud. That was the tool we used, and that was 5 years ago. They still had it with a password, no expiring, so don't do that. A couple of pointers there. So in the corner, you see AKMS security steps and AKMS Azure AD security operation, Azure AD SecOps. So we have details on how to achieve some of those steps to mitigate and getting those basics right. It's very important before we start piling on a ton of workloads on some Azure AD, you get these basics right. In the security operations, for example, we have what are the logs in Azure AD, what are the things that you should watch for, and what are the suggested responses and all of those mitigations. So it's very important that we get those basics right. Right, so moving on, cloud-first approach. So again, now that we covered the basics, the next part is how do we start? This is all about don't compound on on-prem stuff. So how do we kind of put that in a more structured approach across the board? So back to what Adjoa was saying, we break this in 3 areas, right? The first area is about apps, very simple. Don't onboard new apps that use legacy protocols. So let's make sure that applications are using modern protocols like OpenID Connect, SAML, it's kind of modern, and Auth2, and so on. So things that are compatible with Azure AD out of the gate. Similarly with provisioning, Scheme 2.0, any workload that supports that can be compatible with Azure AD. And not like when you need to query the directory, let's make sure that we don't double down on LDAP. Let's make sure to do things with MS Graph on modern infrastructure with Azure AD. Now, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that this also applies to resources that are needed by your users or the applications, right? Yeah. So for example, if you need to deploy a new file server, you can leverage Azure Files. Then there are other things like Cloud Universal Printing and Azure SQL.
So basically, this applies not only to applications per se, but also for some of those workloads as well.
Yes.
All right. So for users, this is not necessarily like it takes a little bit longer to get the HR pipeline to create cloud-only users. But what we can do as an actionable step is make sure that all the attributes of the users that are needed are going to be in the cloud. So that is needed for provisioning, for dynamic group membership, for authorization and things like that within the apps. And then one clear bucket that we keep seeing with the customers, and I just learned that as we were doing is more and more customers, is that some customers have external collaboration with AD accounts. So that is a clear-cut bucket where we can start using cloud-first and cloud-native capability with Azure AD external identities and B2B collaboration. So that is a one clear bucket where we can start like avoiding getting the AD growth over time. And for groups, just use Cloud Groups for new application access. Here we have all the goodness that we have talked over the years, dynamic groups and self-service and all that. One of the things, just to give you a sense of what we're investing on, is we recently announced a public preview of capability called Group Writeback, but essentially we create a group on the cloud, and it's written back on-prem. So we would love to get you folks trying out that feature and give us the feedback. We're learning a ton as we have rolled out with a lot of customers. But this is just to give you a sense of what that Cloud First is going to look like moving forward for groups.
I was going to say something quickly. So if you want to reuse like an on-prem group membership for SharePoint access or email delivery, not for SaaS apps, you can put it into a cloud group. This will put you in a good position to eventually move to cloud groups.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great point, Adwa. There are so many tools in the toolkit and different techniques depending on the scenario where we have to just kind of play with the different capabilities. For devices, Azure AD Join for new Windows clients, we believe that there's no reason to keep doing domain join traditional. There's a lot of degree of support, especially around policy, which is one of the things that I would put here. Our friends in the Intune team put a very nifty, cool, that we got this question all the time. How about my GPOs, right? So this tool, AKMS GPO to Intune, is going to take all the GPOs that you have in your environment. You can analyze them, and then gives you guidance on how to create those equivalent policies, or even better policies, with Intune. So check out that, and Mike, our colleagues, Jason and Susan are going to talk about this. I think it's 2 o'clock?
Yes,
2 o'clock. Check that out, BRK218H, where we talk about it in more detail. So that is for devices. And then, that's, I think, a point where we kind of switch gears and show you a little bit of a demo, where we kind of give you a sense of what the experience can look like. So it's a long demo. So folks in the last 4 rows, we thought we zoomed enough. It's a little bit tiny, but hopefully you can check out the recording and you can see. But we're going to narrate what's going on so you can get a sense of the flow of the demo. So this is a first scenario where I am an employee and just got my new laptop working from home. So this is kind of a modern provisioning experience for a device. So what we're going to do here is fast forward very fast, out-of-box experience of Windows. Let's say I open the box and they start getting the machine working. This is the Windows 10 setup. But here, when I'm going to authenticate, I'm going to use a new Cloud First credential called Temporary Access Pass. Hopefully, most of us have read about it. But essentially, it's a credential created for this purpose. We can make it a very short period of time, set it up for be used only once. You have to go through a workflow to get it. But it is basically a native credential. Once we have that, the Windows experience continues, and at some point, I'm going to get pushed a new policy from the cloud to say, hey, this machine needs to be registered for Windows Hello for Business. We recently announced the Cloud Trust, which makes the setup even easier. So in this case, I am setting up that PIN, and my device is ready to go. So we'll obviously speed up the video for demo purposes. Joyce only gave me 45 minutes, otherwise that would be the entire demo. So now part B is, let's say my device is all up and running, and now I need to get access to my application. So what is going to happen here is going to log in again with Windows Hello for Business PIN. You can do biometrics, but I chose to do the PIN for this demo. So what I'm going to do now is open the browser, and again, productivity. I go and find the applications I have access to with my apps.microsoft.com. So I have all the stuff that I have access to. Our customer that we talked about branded that as like the work from home portal. And let's say I need to have access to another applications because of my new role. So here I go to my access portal, again, self-service, employee productivity. Here, I'm going to request access, but I can have metadata about from this period of time. If I knew it, I have to put a business justification. That helps to create that paper trail for us to prove that we are compliant. And again, this all goes to the lifecycle management, right? So now I had access. Some time goes by, provisioning kicks in. Those capabilities kind of take care of what it means to grant access to that application in the backend. And then after a few minutes, I'm going to log in back to my apps, and you will see a new custom collection that shows me these two new apps. So this is an example of an application that is on-prem. I am in my house using my ISP of choice, and I'm getting to an IIS machine 2008 dashboard with a proxy. Now, I'm going to show you like a bread and butter Salesforce. Here, for me to even get here, I had to have my attributes synchronized, doing cloud first with the cloud provisioning. So now let's talk about the admin side.
Yeah. So let's look at what the administrator had to configure to give Ramiro the access that he got. Okay. So this is a configuration from our entitlement management feature, which is a Premium P2 feature. So here, an access package was created, and the access package contains all the resources that Ramiro had access to. You see the Salesforce Cloud application, and then the Sales Dashboard on-prem application, as well as there was another My Travel application, and then the order processing team, which is a group that he was assigned to when he requested access to the access package. We'll drill into what the group looks like.
Okay. Anytime now, we're going to zoom in, show the group. Should I speed that up? All right.
All right, so you notice that Ramiro is now a member of that group, and he got membership just by requesting access to that access package, and he was provisioned in there to that group. So now we'll take an overview of what the group actually looks like. So this was created this was a cloud group, a security group that was created. And then after the first sync cycle, it was written back on premises. So we'll show you where you set the state, the group write back state. So down below, group write back state is set to security. That's all the administrator had to do or in the portal. That's all they had to do. And after the sync cycle.
Again, all agility, return on investment, just do it from the portal, and then it starts writing back.
Done. Let's take a look at the on-prem server and see the folder to see the contents of the group.
So we're going to see the beloved Active Directory users and computers.
Yes. So in Active Directory users and computers, you notice that there's a group write back folder in there. We'll zoom in very soon. So.
But basically, this is the OU, or the OU container where the groups are created. So
Yep.
we're going to zoom it in. There you go. We have the group there.
Yep, security group, universal. And when you drill in, you'd see that Ramiro is a member of that group.
Come on, that's super cool, no? Right, so you create a group, the group first in the cloud, and then you can choose to write it on-prem as needed by the scenario.
So with this next section, we are going to talk more about modernizing workloads. So let's say you need to give access to a file share over SMB. You can use Azure Files integrated with Azure AD Kerberos. And so here is a look at the storage account. This is the file share, and then these are the contents of the file share now. So in the properties, you see the path, the URL, HTTPS with the entire path there. You notice the same thing on premises, but without the HTTPS. So we'll show you where you would go and configure this. So over here in the storage account, when you click configured over the Azure AD Kerberos, it's a preview feature that we have now, and that's enabled now.
So you just click configure.
Yep, and below is where you set the share level permissions. Let's take a look at the on-prem environment. All right, so this is the shortcut to for the file share server.
Building up the suspense here.
All right, so the same files that we saw in the portal is here. And then you see the path that I pointed out from the Azure portal.
So this is Azure Files, Azure AD Kerberos, showing Windows Explorer from our on-premises machine. I think that's pretty cool.
Yes. Applause.
Go us. All right, so let's just recap a little bit. So the rest of the videos, I was wondering with the machine, the mouse, so I'm going to spare you from that. So just do a recap. A lot of stuff went on, but this is just a sense of what the cloud-first approach kind of give us. First, cloud-first credentials, Azure AD passwordless. So you didn't see me typing any password whatsoever. So I gave out any, I don't even know my password at that point. Again, a powerful tool like the conditional access where we force, hey, for this application, I need a strong credential or a phishable resistant credential with a conditional access. You can do that now. Device is completely managed from the cloud, Azure AD Join and Microsoft Intune. That's how I push the policy to get my Windows 11 for Business. Self-service, we had my apps, my access to request access to applications and discover the applications. I got the bread and butter. We have done this many, many years. So SSO to SaaS applications, as well as cloud app provisioning. We ran out of time to show you, but we have the same engine that does the provisioning to Salesforce can also do provisioning to applications on-prem. So if you have to provision to a SQL database, an LDAP somewhere, on-premises, you can make that happen with the same engine. And then application remote access from on-premises, Azure AD Application Proxy, manage on-prem access from the cloud with legacy groups, Group Writeback, a tool in the toolbox. So as in preview, so we will look to evaluate it and give us your feedback. And then Azure AD Entitlement Management to bundle all that together. So we saw an on-premises app, a cloud app, and a on-premises security group, all as one bundle that you can govern, put workflows around. And then lastly, we kind of, not necessarily cloud first, but this is an example of modernizing an underlying dependency, right? So if you have an application that relies on file share and processing files, you can modernize the underlying dependency while you keep the application doing whatever dependencies in SMB. That's another tool in the tool, another technique to start reducing the dependencies in AD over time.
And this is just a subset of scenarios that work seamlessly, right? For example, if you have, there are going to be times when you need to make some trade-offs. For example, if you have like a traditional Win32 application that needs Kerberos and LDAP on the client side, we recommend that you connect it to a VPN, which can be modernized with Azure AD, and then use that.
Exactly, and this is very important, you point out, is that these experiences are going to help to be very good, but still we're going to have some bucket of scenarios where we have to kind of put some interim kind of approach. So this is a typical example, not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? So there's a lot of things that you can start building up, but obviously we want to acknowledge that some of those cases will continue to prevail over time. Yes. Which is a good segue to the next section, which is migrating the workload. So we talk about cloud first, how can we do stuff to not double down on on-prem, but what do we do with what we have in the environment? So Adwan and I have been, again, huge privilege that we have to work with a lot of our largest complex customers, and we have done a lot of these migrations with a number of them, but we typically see the same faces all over and over again. So there's always a discovery phase where we were quantifying what is it that we're migrating. In the case of ADFS, very simple one, how many apps in ADFS? When you're migrating something else, the currency will be something else, like how many B2B accounts do I need to migrate and so on. So that discovery is going to give you a sense of what do you need to triage, what is it that I really need to migrate, what things are stale that you need to dedupe, etc. And then that gives you some sort of time in the lab to go and create some proof of concepts to nail down those patterns, which is the evaluation phase. So test environment, very important to have to kind of nail those patterns. And then we move to a pilot phase where we take either a business unit or a region or a subset of users or even ourselves here in the IT department, and we just run it for a scope down. Again, pilot, very important, no big bangs if we can help it. And then lastly, we have the scale-out phase where we basically expand that after we have a pilot and evaluation and all that. Then this is where we have the project management, like burn down list and very rigid schedule. Every weekend we cut over X applications. And finally, when applicable, if we have some system that we can turn off, a server when to turn off, that's when that things happen.
Yeah. What we've also learned from customers is that you want to optimize your initiatives to help reduce your on-premises infrastructure. And so some of the things is, I think we already mentioned that you're going to have to work with different teams. So there's going to be projects that you can run sequentially and others that you can run in parallel. But this will require like good project management between all these different teams. So that's one thing to be aware of.
Right. Here again, another plug, AKMS, AD to Azure AD. In the white paper, we have a very detailed list on those 3 areas that Adwa walked us through. In what is it that you can start migrating today? I know probably I'm going to get a ton of questions. We're going to get a ton of questions. What about this? What about that? This is what we can do today, right? As we progress over time, there are more things that are going to light up. It's going to mature to have more things that you can migrate. This is what you can do right now. And make sure you check the white paper where we put that all in a lot of detail. So what we wanted to kind of close down the presentation is to kind of summarize how a real live customer did it. So we want to just kind of walk you through a journey from our experience.
Yeah, so this was a customer in retail. They had 90,000 Active Directory accounts, split between 30,000 for employees and 60,000 for their guest users, like their partners and their vendors. And they started off with just basic usage of Office 365 and Azure. Their pain point was they had unreliable on-prem point solutions. And so they had 3 timeline goals. First, to decommission some on-premises systems like SSO and MFA. Then afterwards, they wanted to get out of their data center and then treat Active Directory as just another app, like as we described in state 4. So state 4 was their goal.
Right. So how do they tackle the basics? The first thing that they did was to whatever, like, sure, the headache that they had was this on-premises system. They look at the configuration and see how many apps were there and see which ones were actually used. One step that they used, that they executed during that step was, okay, we have 3 different applications about people sharing files with each other. So they normalized around SharePoint and OneDrive, and then they don't even bother migrating the other 2. So that is one example of what comes out of that discovery. As part of that proof of concepts that they did to nail down those patterns, they found from the simple Salesforce that's literally go through another wizard and I'm done, to the more complex where we have a 3-tier app with an API manager, header-based authentication. So they basically created those kind of reference architectures, and then that's how they worked. In parallel, again, depending how much appetite you have and how much bandwidth, we had the SecOps team working in modernizing the playbooks, understanding the signals, and making sure that the SecOps are modern there. Another team in parallel was taking care of the employee experience of the productivity tools, so the Office 365 experience. So they chose to move away from that painful SSO system and go straight to Azure AD directly with password hash sync and seamless SSO. So they had that trade-off for a period of time. This is all about like managing trade-offs, right? So for a period of time, they had the parallel system with Azure AD in authentication directly, so they coexisted with those 2 systems for a period of time. Then, on top of that, another parallel track is where we have a big workload with the cloud HR system. So that's where the first time they used Azure MFA for the HR managers for the rollout. And then they launch out the cloud HR as a hero rollout, which I think is a great practice. Whenever I was talking with a friend here yesterday, this is a great opportunity when you have a big launch like that to bundle as many changes as you can as a single package and reduce the overhead and change management. So that was the basics. Now, let's keep going here.
Yep. So after accomplishing the basics, they focused on projects that could help them decommission their on-premises solutions. So they deployed Azure AD Proxy for their remote access. They rolled out MFA. After a successful pilot in the basic stage, they rolled out MFA for all their employees. So this is like the scale out. And then they migrated some more apps and WAM, first for the employees and then for their guest users.
Yeah, WAM stands for Web Access Management, so all based on headers, cookies, etc., legacy system.
And then they had a big party.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where they go and cut off that legacy system. And just to give you a sense of the timing, the basics took them a year and a half. This part took them like 10 months. And we're talking about 500 applications there. So important, spend the time doing the basics right, and then the scale out is a matter of project management and co-chase app owners to make sure they migrate and test and so on. So that basically is what, 2 years and change in the journey, and the journey continues. So they are currently working on taking all these legacy accounts in AD and move them to natively use Azure AD B2B collaboration. Again, you go on your own speed. They address the main pain points first with all the bandwidth they could. They throw as many parallel tracks. Now they don't have that same bandwidth, so they are just now in the long tail of all other priorities. So another one of those that, in my opinion, was kind of missed opportunity, that we could have modernized the provisioning alongside. They chose not to do that, but that's the part of the journey, right? You choose what is it that you want to focus on. And then the next frontier for them is the governance, right? And one thing that I run out of space to put in the slide is, in the meantime, another parallel track was to triaging all the infrastructure and choose what was going to be migrated as is with lift and shift, virtualizing with infrastructure as a service, or taking which workloads were just completely not migrated and just go with SaaS version of it, as I mentioned, solutions to share files and things like that. So all of that happened in parallel, and they would eventually get out of the data center in that kind of same 2-year period. So anyway, so we wanted to kind of wrap it up with that as an example of what can be done. And if this customer with almost 100,000 accounts can do it, so can you.
Yes. So here are the go-tos for you. Please go and read our white paper, aka.ms/AD to Azure AD. We've split up the actionable task into 3 buckets. What you can do to secure your environment, what you can do to transform it, and then what you can do in terms of scaling out. And so for tomorrow, go check your basics. The 2 links that we mentioned earlier, aka.ms/security steps and aka.ms/Azure AD SecOps. Deploy password protection and turn on password hash sync.
Yeah, so stuff easy that you don't need to go and do massive changes. In 1 month, start transforming. Then start do some of the Cloudflare stuff that we talked about. Azure AD join new devices. Go ADJ. Stop onboarding legacy applications in the environment. I know that's not 100% something that we can control, but let's start having those conversations with other teams to make sure that we provide that guidance and that reference. And then ourselves, deploy passwordless for your own privileged accounts. That is very quick. We couldn't show in the demo because we didn't have enough time, but this is an example. This group of people, the administrators, roll out FIDO2 keys, right? Roll out Authenticator app. It's very simple to do those things in a very controlled pilot for yourselves in the IT department. And then in 6 months, Sajwa, what do we have?
Yeah, so scale out. So after you've had a successful pilot with applications, and then passwordless for your privileged account, you scale out to all your users in your environment.
And we just walked through that, right? The journey is beyond 6 months. We just box it into 6 months because I think it's a good actionable time frame. Hopefully we have a version 2 of this talk and future events, and maybe the go-tos are going to evolve over time, but essentially a lot of work ahead of us, but it's something that we can start breaking smaller problems. And with that, we have the links here for the resources, and we want to make sure we have at least a couple minutes for questions from the chat. And with that, we're very grateful. It's a great time for us to be back in person. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Good job.